There is no better way to improve your fantasy baseball team than the waiver wire. And in this video, I'm breaking down the players you need to add and the ones you need to avoid to upgrade your roster today. Like it, hype it, bang it. I'm Chris, and welcome to Number 2 Sports. Okay, first up here, a little spoiler alert, because we have already talked about this guy in my previous videos, and maybe there is some little homer bias here. Go ahead, sue me. But what I think we've seen so far in this limited sample size this year just justifies my excitement for a few reasons. First off, his best pitch got even better when he was already regarded as one of the better pitches in the MLB, and then his secondary pitches have got even a little bit better. So if he just continues on this trajectory of his last two starts with the added velo and the added movement, I see no reason why he can't be a top 30 starting pitcher rest of season. And I'm happy to welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bryce Miller from the Seattle Marooners. So really, I do feel okay somewhat putting him back in the main waiver wire section because his roster rate is still under 40%, which I think is obviously just way too low. But I do understand if he is mostly gone in a majority of those super competitive leagues. But even so, I still think he's a good trade candidate to go out and try and get. And if you already have him rostered, it's always nice just to hear someone pumping up your tires about one of your players you already have on your team and just giving a good old nice roster base. So stay tuned, listen to this segment, because there are two real changes here that Miller's made so far this year that I think can start to propel him potentially into ace territory. Okay, so the first change here, Miller's four-seamer has gained about 2 ticks of velo this year, now sitting around 97, 98 with extra vert. He was nearly at 20 inches of induced vertical break against the Chicago White Sox, but he also added about 3 more inches of cut on that heater as well. Combining that with his arm angle and a 1.6 height adjusted VAA, it's actually insane. I already thought the fastball, and lots of others already thought that fastball was elite in prior years, but these additions make it even better now. And secondly, last year the slider was an average gyro slider around 86 miles per hour, which we know has very little spin efficiency, resulting in less movement, and it's just intended to be thrown harder. But now it's suddenly 88 miles per hour with the same spin movement as before, really giving him another solid offering besides his four-seamer, because the concern with Miller always has been his ultra reliance on the heater with lack of secondaries. But now that change with his slider and the improved heater now elevates everything else in his arsenal from a splitter to curveball to sweeper. Overall, it just makes everything so much more dominant for what Bryce Miller's trying to accomplish on the mound. And the stuff just has looked tremendous so far. Miller generated 13 swinging strikes on 72 pitches, including 7 with his four-seamer, which he did throw 60% of the time. And don't forget here, Miller was a top 10 starting pitcher way back in 2024 for fantasy, and I'm not saying he's ever going to get to those levels again, but I do think he is a must-add player everywhere, even with the potential piggyback situation with Luis Castillo. I think that's going to end very soon. For one, I think Miller's just too good, and 2, I think Castillo has just lost it, man. I think he's just going to go straight into a pen roll. But I see no reason why Miller can't be a top 30 starting pitcher with upside if both these changes we've seen so far, 2 starts in, stay true for the rest of the season. And that's not just my bias talking. Okay, and we'll keep going with some that I actually recently grabbed in one of my main leagues earlier this week. I had been eyeing him for a little while now, but now that he could be activated off the 60-day IL to potentially pitch this weekend, I'm not sure exactly what the Detroit Tigers are going to do. He was a 2025 playoff standout, striking out 8, allowing 1 earned run across 8 high-pressure situation innings in the playoffs, reinforcing the belief that his stuff will play at the major league level. Welcome to the main waiver wire section, Mr. Troy Melton. So Melton has been shelved the entire year as he works himself back from that right elbow strain that he suffered earlier in the year, but he has looked amazing in his rehab assignment, collecting a 1.54 ERA, a .69 whip, nice, and a 16-2 strikeout to walk ratio and 11.2 innings of work. His arsenal consists of a four-seamer that hovers around 97 miles per hour, but he has great extension at 6.9 feet, Nice. A slider, cutter, sinker, splitter, and curveball. The whole shebang. Melton has solid plans to attack both sides of the plate, and I do think there is some real upside here, especially since Melton did show some potential last year with the Tigers in 2025. He's only 25 years old, and he had a 2.76 ERA over 45.2 innings of work between the bullpen and starting. I think he's definitely worth the add in 12-team leagues to see where this potentially could go, or deeper leagues at the very least. Everyone's always chasing that upside, always looking for a little bit of juice at the starting pitcher position, and I think Melton could be that guy. All right, and another repeat guy, even though we didn't go that in-depth with him because it was earlier in the season and he was a prospect to stash in the prior video that we did mention him, but he's called up now. He's getting starts at third base and shortstop, and he's just straight a ball player through and through, who's already hit his first major league home run. He's a consensus top 20 prospect guy. Mariners fans everywhere, myself included, are just stoked for this kid. Welcome back to the main waiver wire section, Mr. COLT 45, Colt Emerson. Now, Emerson may just end up being a better real life player because of just his exceptional defense, but it's not like he's hurting for upside in fantasy whatsoever. He stashed 255, 347, 469 with 7 home runs and 10 stolen bases in 38 games in AAA this year. Just showcasing that potentially very fantasy-friendly skill set that he has, all while battling through some minor injuries along the way too. Emerson made his debut kind of unexpectedly too, kind of last minute, getting the call-up just hours before the game on May 17th. I was actually at my parents' watching the game. I hadn't been on Twitter, so I hadn't seen any of that. And then I turned on, I was like, who the f is that at third base making that play? And little behold, it was Colt Emerson out there flashing leather, almost giving me a jammer. So that was pretty cool. Colt has only picked up 1 hit so far in his MLB career, even though it was a home run, as I'm recording this at least, but he's picked up a few walks, and he's just showing that nice plate discipline. He doesn't look overmatched whatsoever so far in these limited sample size and these limited at-bats so far for his career. His exit velocity readings as a 20-year-old, remember, are right around average, or at least where they should be. He can't even go to bars yet. Like, it's insane that he's actually born in 2005. It just makes me feel so freaking old. So there's definitely room for him to grow into his power and show some improvements there as he gets stronger and more adjusted to major league pitching. His contact rate on pitches in the strike zone is 86.5%, which is great. He can tend to be a little bit too aggressive, but it's nothing major that he can't overcome or that he can't fix as he gets more used to the MLB. All his hitting tools and skill set are great, and if they can come together at the major league level, I can see him being a very valuable fantasy asset regardless of the league format or size. I believe like the ceiling outcome for him will be something similar to like what JJ Weatherholt's doing this year. He can be a little bit of a drag on the batting average, but he does everything else so well that he's viewed as like a must-start option. The Mariners are just absolutely starved for juice in that lineup. They're hoping Emerson can be that spark, and regardless of everything else, Emerson is just the kind of prospect worth adding in all leagues in case he hits the ground running, but I would temper expectations just a little bit because it's not often that you hear many 20-year-old success stories in the MLB. But he's more than worth the fleer in all 10 and 12-man leagues right now. Next up, we have an electric starting pitching prospect where we had a little excitement earlier this week when he was scratched from his AAA start, thinking he was going to get the call up to the majors with the recent injuries the Marlins had been dealing with Snelling, and then also Garrett being optioned back down to AAA. It looked like it was kind of set up for him to be called up, but to rain on our parade, it looks like it was more of an injury precautionary move. It could have been blister related, and he's actually going on the 7-day IL list. Now, I don't think this really changes things too much besides the fact that he's obviously not going to be up in the majors within the week, but his spot is still open. And this prospect was just one of the top pitchers listed on every preseason rank list because the stuff is electric. And that is the hard-throwing lefty, Mr. Thomas White. Not to be confused with Mr. Walter White, the greatest cook to ever do it. Before we get into it though, White's stats on paper are nothing to brag home about. It actually looks pretty crappy. He has a 4.01 ERA, a 1.46 whip. He's never pitched past the 5th inning, and he's just struggled mightily with his control. On paper, it just looks like a pitcher that frankly should not be called up and isn't ready for major league level competition. But like I said earlier though, a spot is open and ready for him, and his arsenal is just so goddamn good so goddamn electric that a couple tweaks there and a little bit better command, it's not hard to envision his stuff playing at an MLB level. There is legitimate strikeout potential here. White had an 18.7 swinging strike rate last year, which, fun fact, was just 1/10 of a point off from being the highest rate ever recorded in a full season by a major league pitcher. So White can miss bats. There's no question about that. He has a high 90s heater with plenty of carry and arm side run, a wipeout slider that features a huge sweeping action as well with good depth, and a mid-80s changeup which continues to get better, slowly turning into a plus offering that's neutralizing right-handed hitters, which every lefty needs to be able to do. White's success will definitely hinge on his ability to just throw strikes, to stay ahead in the count and not get behind batters and eventually walk them. He's still young and the stuff is just so good that he could legit become a true #1 starter with just average control. And that's obviously worth chasing for fantasy. So this next one definitely falls under the category of like a post-hype sleeper. I was definitely interested in him heading into the year. It was giving me kind of like Jordan Lawler type vibes, where they're uber talented athletic guys who just haven't been able to really do anything at the highest level, but we're potentially getting another shot where their career trajectory could go either one of two ways. One, you make improvements and solidify yourself as a major leaguer, or two, you just continue to decline and you're going to be fighting for a roster spot on a major league roster the rest of your career. So there are some things that we need to talk about Dylan Cruz being recalled to the majors earlier this week. Cruz hit .258, .345, .432 with 5 home runs and 7 steals in 41 games for AAA this year. Stats that aren't going to blow you away by any means, but supposedly he did have some like epiphany moment with the coaching staff where he realized that if he just swung at more good pitches or more good strikes, you will get better results, which saying out loud is just kind of ridiculous. It's like something you'd say to like a 12-year-old, not a former #2 overall pick in the MLB who's 24 years old. But if it's unlocked like some mental barrier that Cruz had in his head, who cares what it means, what it says, if it leads to actual better production on the diamond. And also one other little note thing that we should mention here, for the Nationals' sake, he has now spent enough time in AAA to ensure that he'll finish the season with less than 2 years of service time, pushing his free agency back by a year, which doesn't seem like it matters now based on what we've seen, but it does matter if we do see some real improvement here. So looking at Cruz's AAA stint a little bit more in depth, it saw him hit the ball harder than ever before, but also whiff more than usual. He averaged 94.7 miles per hour off the bat, which was a huge improvement on his MLB average of 89.5. However, that did come with a 24.9% strikeout rate, and if you add that usual 5% that I like to do with a guy transitioning back into the majors, we're approaching that close to no range of 30%. This is also concerning since he struck out just 17.3% of the time in his AAA stints in 24 and 2025. If he continues to chase as many pitches in the majors as he was doing in the minors, it'll be a very fine line that Cruz has to walk this year to have any sort of fantasy relevance in mixed leagues. Still though, Cruz has that underlying fantasy skill set to have potential. He has above average bat speed at 73.5 miles per hour. I know he's trying to put the ball in there, pull the ball in the air a lot more to his pull side, and he stole 29 bags in just 116 games as a major leaguer. It seems like he's going to sell out for power a lot more now, even if it does come at the expense of his batting average. I don't want to compare him to PCA by any means because I don't think he's at that level, but if that is the route that he goes, like superb defender, sell out for power, and then use his athleticism on the base paths, there is certainly a way for him to be fantasy relevant for 12 league teams. I know he's shown us literally nothing to get excited about in his almost 500 career plate appearances now at the major league level, but he was the #2 overall pick for a reason. He has the raw talent, speed, and athleticism, and if things end up clicking for him, he's a type of talent that you just know won't last long on the waiver wire. You get scooped up immediately, and I'm in for adding Cruz in 12-team leagues right now in the hopes that this MLB stint might end up being different. All right, and you know we love to do bonus guys around here, so we're going to get one for you, and it's kind of a tale of two stories, really. He has a great expected ERA, he has great fastball velo, he limits hard contact, and he produces a lot of ground balls, just key foundational pieces that you want from a starting pitcher in fantasy. but then he struggles with his control, has a poor walk rate, and middling K numbers. Stuff that exactly contradicts the positives I just mentioned. If you guessed this pitch already from the blurb and the StatCast page, I owe you a big fat kiss. You got it, the urethra Mr. Walbert Orania. So Orania is a 22-year-old rookie who I fielded a bunch of questions about on the last couple videos really, but I saw a change in his last outing that made me feel a little bit more comfortable enough to include him in the main waiver wire section this week. So Urania has a 4-pitch arsenal. He has a 4-seamer, a sinker, a changeup, and a sweeper. You guys know I love dudes who chuck absolute gas, and Urania most certainly does with his heater. He has a 4-seamer that hovers around 98 miles per hour, but does have minimal vert, poor extension, and a low attack angle. I kind of call it like an empty heater. It doesn't get any whiffs, and the movement on it is pretty meh. Do the cool kids still say meh, or is that like old news and that was like the most boomer thing ever to say? Arania's changeup is definitely his go-to pitch. Is at 91 miles per hour, and he induced 12 whiffs on it in his last outing for 45.9 CSW. It has 17.4 inches of arm side break, and the coolest thing about it is it looks identical, has the exact same movement as his sinker, but it's 7 miles per hour slower, making it just extremely difficult for a hitter to pick up between the two. And to get to the change I mentioned earlier was with his sweeper. It was highly productive against righties his last outing for 42.9 CSW and landed for 67% strikes. And that's a legit game changer for him. It gives him another weapon to attack righties where he can tend to struggle a little bit. It's his slowest pitch in the arsenal at 84.9 miles per hour on average, and he just needs it with no real breaking ball that he has the ability to use. He has struggled with the feel for it at times this year. That's why I was a little skeptical, but he looked like he found something in his last outing, which has given me a little hope. With a 98 mile per hour heater in his back pocket, a filthy changeup, and a sinker that mimics the exact same movement but just harder, if he can maintain the feel for his sweeper, this arsenal will work at the MLB level. But in the end, it all will come down to command for him, because he doesn't have a whiffable fastball or breaking ball. There are legitimate foundational pieces here to be a worthwhile guy for fantasy, and that's what we like chasing. We're chasing upside, upside, upside. He's got Texas, Tampa, and Colorado up next, and I'd add him in 12-league teams everywhere for that schedule and just to see if he can continue making progress. Okay, now we're on to the most added players section here from the last few days. Again, we're going to go over 5 pitchers and 5 hitters, and the first pitcher up, we got Mr. McDonald's, Trevor McDonald. Now, the quarter pounder with the Chiefs has been pitching really well his last few outings. He doesn't walk anyone, and he produces an insane amount of ground balls, and has average whiff, chase, and K percentages. I don't know how much faith I really have in him long term. He can tend to get hit pretty hard. He really only has a 3-pitch arsenal, but the biggest unknown besides that other stuff is his rotation spot when Logan Webb does return. I believe McDonald's has earned the spot over some other guys like Hauser, but I'm not the manager of the Giants to your surprise. But if he sticks in the rotation and continues to pitch well, this could definitely be a guy in the main waiver wire section in the coming weeks. Then we got Connor Prelup. We've talked about him lots now. I almost put him back in the main waiver wire section, but I felt like cheating because I already had a couple of repeats there, and he also didn't pitch very well on Friday, but he has a solid fastball. His stuff is great. He has a decent changeup, a nasty slider. His last outing besides tonight, he went 6 innings with 8 Ks against a solid Brewers lineup. There may be some workload concerns later on, but we don't care about that now. You can always sell higher, deal with it when that time comes. You probably should grab him even with that rough outing on Friday. Then we got Jack Leiter. Now, I really like his stuff, but he's just too inconsistent. He walks too many guys and has too many mishaps just over the dead center of the plate that get absolutely punished. His expected FIP is 3.64, a lot lower than his actual 4.18, so he has been a tad unlucky this year. I don't think we're going to see the breakout like some people would have thought this year, but he's just a decent streamer in my eyes, at least right now. And then the big one, a lot of people adding this guy liking him, that's going to be Zebby Matthews. Now, his return to the majors have just been great so far. 7 innings, 5 Ks, 0 earned runs against Miami, and then followed that up going 6 innings with 6 Ks and 2 earned runs against Houston. He's not getting a lot of whiffs though. Doesn't produce elite ground balls, and some of his location is still highly suspect. Throwing middle and out of third heaters is not where you want to be, especially when you're missing them a ton middle. He does have an unbelievable schedule coming up though with the White Sox and the Pirates on tap, so I definitely think you need to grab him for those. But I do just feel, I don't know why, I feel like the bottom just could fall out at any moment. I just don't think the execution and the locations will limit enough hard contact moving forward, especially with all his secondaries being down 1 to 2 ticks this year as well. I like him, but I'm not going to let him like spank my ass or anything like that. And then last up, we got Cade Cavalli. So it was nice to see Cade get back on track after being in the main waiver wire section a few weeks ago. He still has an unbelievable curveball. The fastball velo was actually up a tick in his last start. I like him for the strikeout upside, but I do worry against tougher lineups. He is just super close to really being a stud guy. He just needs another go-to whiff pitch to offset the curve on the days that he doesn't have the utmost feel for it. It feels like he's super close, and I want to believe that he's super close, but we know how challenging it can be for someone just to magically add another whiffable pitch. Okay, now on to the 5 batters. First up, we got Zach Geloff. Now, his roster rate should honestly just be higher now, especially for 2-bag. We highlighted him when he was barely 5% owned, and he's just continued to rate, continued to perform with the legitimate changes that he made. The bat speed, the stance, the attack angle, and the pull air percentage. He's ranked 68 in his last 30 games for category leagues. I don't want to jinx him. Maybe I already did, but maybe he's just back to that rookie level production where he was so successful. He needs to be rostered. Then next up, we had Dalton Varsho. It's interesting to see that he's changed his approach to more contact based instead of selling out for power like he did last year, which we saw him have some tangible results, hitting 20 home runs in just 271 plate appearances. His bat speed is down nearly 3 miles per hour, but it has helped reduce his strikeout rate to 19.3% from a gross 28.4% last year. His ISO has just plummeted though. It's down in the dumpster from 310 to 165 this year. So he's just not selling out for power at all. He's completely switched his approach. We'll see how much that change affects his power in the long run, but I'm not that interested in him if it's just going to be like some sort of empty hit profile. Then we had Angel Martinez. Now he's on pace for like a legitimate breakout, I guess. Like he's been insane over the last month with 6 home runs, 4 stolen bases, and 16 RBI. There's not much really to like in his underlying stats. Nothing really seems that sustainable, like at all. But similar to Perdomo last season, sometimes that just doesn't matter. There's no guarantee that Martinez keeps this up all year, but with the way that he's playing right now, he just can't afford to be on any waiver wire. Cross your fingers, toes, tits, and see what happens. And then the last hitter here, Jake the Snake, Jake McCarthy. So over his last 25 games, McCarthy is hitting 338, 368, 549 with 2 home runs, 11 runs scored, 15 RBI, and 4 steals. He's not hitting anything at all like it's super limp biscuit. Like look at his StatCast page here, 2nd percentile for both exit velocity and hard hit percentage. The guy is hitting there with a wet noodle. Like I guess he's making consistent contact and he is running when he gets on base. He has 9 steals in his 40 games this season. Like if you need batting average and speed, Jake McCarthy could be your guy. I was literally the Hunchback of Notre Dame that entire section there. Holy. All right, recap time. We're going to recap my prior waiver wire video from May 15th to see how these guys performed and to see if a punishment is justified. We've been kind of on a roll this year, not many punishments at all. So let's see if this video is any different. So first up, we had AJ Ewing. Now he has all the makings to be a real fantasy contributor this year. If you can just hold off on an extended cold streak, you got to add him everywhere. Then we had Henry Bolte. Now he sat a couple times, but speed is already evident. Same thing as Ewing. Now, if it all comes together for him, he has the makings of being a legitimate fantasy contributor. Again, you got to add him everywhere. And then we had Ryan Waldschmidt. Now, Waldy has arguably made a bigger impact than both, showing way more consistency and a little speed too. The early returns are so promising with him. I expect a lot better results moving forward. I'm super into Ryan Waldschmidt. Then we had Sam Antonacci. Now, I think this guy could just be a points league stud if he continues to run. The plate discipline is next level elite for a player of his age. Then we had Carson Bench. Now he continues to rack up multi-hit games. He looks great at the leadoff spot. What a turnaround for him. Again, another guy that just kind of needs to be added everywhere. And then last up, we had Grayson Rodriguez, who got absolutely pummeled against the Dodgers. I told you not to start him. The next couple starts are going to be super interesting to see what type of pitcher he's going to be after all these injuries. Man, adding that up, though, there's no punishment. No way, baby. All right, guys, I think that's it for this video. I'm tired. We got through a bunch of good names in this video. There's a bunch of good names in the last video. I appreciate you guys watching, liking, hyping. If you aren't subbed, make sure you hit that sub button. It does help me out a lot, still just trying to grow slowly but surely. I love this shit. I hope we continue to get better, continue to get bigger. And all thanks to you guys, really, for watching, commenting down below. Again, that's my favorite part. I love just shooting the shit with you guys about fantasy baseball. Have a good long weekend to all my United States guys. And everybody else, have a good rest of your day, night, week, weekend, wherever you are. And I'll see you guys real soon.